least one person has already, I think, put in their name and stuff in the chat box. So thank you. For those that haven't, if you'll do that, that would be great. And so what we're going to do today, we're actually, I got messed up on the schedule. And so we're actually doing 2 classes today in one.
Okay.
So we're going to hit company foundation and business planning, but that's okay. We can make that work and have it all come together. So in fact, actually though, I do need to do one thing real quick on the computer. So let me see if I can find it here. So give me 1 second here. All right, so we're gonna get going. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So today we're gonna talk about the foundation and business plan. So I apologize, but I'm just gonna stare at you the whole time. So
It's fine.
I got one person in the room with me because the rest of you guys are at home, so you didn't have to go in the snow or something, I guess. So anyway, so we're gonna go through and talk about the company foundation. And as part of that, goal setting and business plan is part of the foundation. So we'll hit that piece of it when we get to there. So, but here's where I want to start with actually is I want to give you guys kind of the background on Everest and where it came from and all those kinds of things. So what was going on in the market, and for you guys that are on Zoom, you're going to have to participate today. So unmute and share. So, but what was going on in the real estate market in 2009? Anyone know?
Personally, don't.
You don't know? Okay.
No.
So for sure, Zoom,
Huge
you guys at home.
downfall.
Oh, hang on, let me turn it up. All right, go ahead.
A huge downturn in the market. It crashed.
Yeah, good. So that's what had gone on. So the birth of Century 21 Everest, and that, which actually wasn't Century 21 at the time, but the birth of Everest came about in 2009. So it was when the real estate market, and I remember being an agent at that time, wondering and worrying about like what's going to happen and where's things going to go. The only time actually that was worse than that for me was March of last year when like everything started shutting down. I kind of went, uh-oh, like what's going to happen to the real estate?
Come here.
All right, gotta mute you guys. Got background noise, so anyway, feel free to unmute, but once after, then mute. So I remember in March of last year feeling like, oh, like this really could be kind of the end of everything. In fact, actually, as I say that, so I was in California yesterday, flew home last night, and had rented a car down there on Tuesday, and was talking to the guy at the car rental place. And I had asked him, I said, I noticed that from when COVID hit, like coming back out of this, like cars are really expensive. You guys don't have a whole lot of cars. And I started asking him, what was going on? And he said, yeah, when COVID hit, they sold 80% of the fleet of cars that car rental companies had because they all assumed like they were going out of business, that travel was going to be done and all of those kinds of things. So anyway, we all panicked a bit. Well, 2009 was kind of that same way. And what happened is then George Morris, John Syatt, Rob Oakey, Gretchen Smoot, which you probably don't know who Gretchen is, and then one other person, and I never remember who it is, were sitting around a conference room table in 2009. And George said to them, what would you guys think about us starting a real estate company? And John Syatt said to him, if anybody else said that, I would say you're crazy, but because it's you, let's do it. So that was the birth of Century 21 Everest. Now, with that in mind, part of what they decided and they talked about is we want to build this company to be built based upon principles that are going to lead to the people being successful. And so that's where Everest, the birth of Everest came from. Now, I'm going to give to you 6 areas or 6 principles that that they decided to found this company on. So part of when I talk about this class, the name of this class is the company foundation, is the foundation upon which they wanted to build this company are built upon these 6 principles. And interestingly enough, as they work with and teach the managers in the company, the thing that is told to the managers within the company is all of the teaching and training and everything that goes on in this company should have a basis on one of these 6 principles. So I'm going to share those with you. But before we do that, I first want to go over one other piece to that. So think of it as this way. If you were building a house and before you put in the foundation, they put the footings to the foundation in. So think of it as this. What I'm about to show you are the footings to the foundation. So I'm going to, oops, that marker's not working. I think my job is to find every marker in the world that doesn't work and throw it away. All right. So, and I don't know how well you guys can see this on Zoom, but we'll see what it looks like here. All right. Can you tell what that is? And I recognize I have horrible handwriting. I'm not a very good artist, but when you look at that, what do you see? So if it's on Zoom, can you guys even see it? All right, somebody unmute.
Yeah,
What
we
is
can
it?
do it.
Say it again. I couldn't hear you. Say
See a 3-legged elephant.
Good, that's good. All right, so no, it's close. 3-legged stool is what it's supposed to be. Okay, so think of it this way. Think of it as if this was a 3-legged stool and I've written on it that it's your life. So think of it as your life has 3 legs to that. So this is the footings to the foundation. And so as within in this company, as we teach and train, we've got, think of it as this stool with 3 legs on it. Now, one of the things you will hear John Syatt say from time to time, which I know a lot of you guys from Utah here have not met him, but he was one of the founders of the company, but he runs the California operations now. So we don't see him a whole lot in Utah too much anymore. But one of the things that you will hear him say when you hear him talk is he will say from time to time that we are really a personal development company that happens to sell real estate. And the reason for that he says that is because on this stool, this 3-legged stool, think of it as that you've got, this is going to be, this leg is your health, this leg is your relationships, and this one is your business or money, you could say, I guess. Okay. So business. So think of it this way. Everything that we talk and we teach about really is about helping you to have more balance in your life. Meaning if I took this 3-legged stool and I were to pull one of the legs out, what happens to that stool? Yeah, it's probably going to tip unless it's balanced just right. Okay. So now think of it this way. The example that I like to use is Tiger Woods. Who is Tiger Woods? No clue?
No.
Wow, see, you guys on Zoom are really gonna have to, she's just gonna say she doesn't know the answer to everything, so you guys have to answer.
Was the best golfer.
Okay, good. So
I
you
thought he was
said,
the worst driver.
yeah, that's true, right? So, so you said was the best. So what happened?
He had a lot of affairs.
Yeah, okay, good. So think of it under this relationship section is the first thing that got off track was so for you guys that don't know, arguably probably still is considered to be the best golfer ever. But what happened is about, I don't know, 10-ish years ago, he started having some affairs on his wife. So he got messed up in the relationships part of his life, which then led to, he also started to have some other health issues, which he started having back problems and some of those things. So then he got off track there. Well, then what did that do to his business? went down. So the same thing applies with us. Now, let me kind of speak to it and say this, because most of you guys are new to real estate. I have trained agents, specifically helped new agents get their businesses up and running for the last over 15 years. And here's what I will tell you. I have watched a number of them come in and hit the ground and just go like crazy working on this part, is the business part of their life, which is fine and it's great, except for that they neglected the relationships part of it. And I have watched a lot of agents come in, become successful, but then end up being divorced. And so for me, I guess what I'm saying is, don't get so caught up in the business side of things that you neglect your health and the relationships piece of it, because those three things work together. Now, keep in mind, part of this company's mission is to help people become their best, not just in real estate, but in relationships and health as well. And so part of what we want to do is help you to grow and to become successful, not just in business, but in your relationships and your health as well. Okay. So those are the footings to the foundation. So now let's get into the foundation. On the foundation, there are 6 pieces, and I told you I'm going to give you these 6. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and talk about these 6. We're going to spend a lot of time today on the business plan part of it, because like I said, we're combining 2 classes into one, but we're going to make it work. So, all right. So the first thing, now, where these 6 came from, though, let me help you understand that. Where these 6 things came from is George was trying to figure out what makes an agent successful. And more so, really, what he was trying to figure out for himself is what did he need to do to be successful? So he started to watch these top agents throughout the country, but also here with the Salt Lake Valley, and started to keep some notes and figuring out and recognizing what is it that these top producing agents have, or what is it that they do that others don't do. And he then created these 6 items, which were organic. It's not like he just sat down and wrote it out. He just over time figured it out. So the first one is this, is purpose, vision, or you could think of it as their why, okay? So here's what he found, is the top producing agents, the people who are most successful, have a purpose, or you could say it as they have a vision of where they're going, or they understand why they're doing it, what they're trying to accomplish. Now, in terms of that, there was a study done at USC by this guy by the name of Warren Bennis. And what he was doing is he was studying, he wanted to figure out the qualities of people who are in the top 2% in any field. So it doesn't, not just real estate, but in any field, what was the top characteristics? Now, I'm not going to share those 4. He came up with 4, but the first one that he came up with, that Warren Bennis came up with, is that they have a clear vision of where they're going. So part of what is going to create success for an agent, and what you will notice, when you listen to the daily messages that George does, as you listen to those messages, one of the things you are going to notice is he spends a significant amount of time talking about purpose, understanding your purpose, your vision, your why, or your dreams. Sometimes he'll say it as. But the reason for that is because if you're not clear where you're headed to, you're not going to get there. And so, in fact, I mentioned to you guys I was in California yesterday. I yesterday got on the ride at Disneyland. I was at Disneyland. Got on the ride yesterday of Alice in Wonderland. Alice goes down the rabbit hole. She's lost. She's trying to get out. She runs into the Cheshire Cat. And she says to the Cheshire Cat, "Can you help me get where I'm going?" And he says, well, she comes to a fork in the road. Which way should I go? The Cheshire Cat says, well, it depends. Where are you trying to get to? And she said, I don't know. And his response was, well, then it doesn't matter what road you take. See, the same thing applies for us, is if we don't know where we're going, any road will get you there. But when you know where you're headed to, I like thinking of it as like with a GPS. You plug in your destination, and then your phone is constantly reminding you if you're off track. If you miss a turn, it's telling you where to turn. See, what part of what we need to understand for all of us is, what is your purpose? Meaning, why did you come into real estate? Why, of everything you could have chosen to do? Now, I don't answer this question for me out loud, but I want you to answer it for yourself. Of everything you could have chosen to do, why real estate? And what is it about real estate that caused you to want to come into real estate? Why did you choose to do real estate as that vehicle? Meaning, see, part of what we're saying is there needs to be something bigger that you're working towards, that you're wanting to accomplish, besides just, I want to make a lot of money. Because if that's what's driving you, it's probably not going to happen. Because almost every person comes into this business thinking, well, I'm going to be my own boss. I'll be able to have as much money as, I can decide how much money I want to make because I just go do that many sales and that's how much money I'll make. But I will also tell you, after observing tons and tons of agents doing it, very few become top producers. But the ones who do have something that they're looking at of saying, okay, so you're successful with real estate, then what? What are you going to do with it? What's the purpose of you wanting to be successful? See, because if you have that, your why, something that's going to drive you, you're more likely to get up in the morning and go do it. Think of it this way. Part of it, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, coming into real estate, I had no clue what it really took to go find a client. Like, I thought that you just showed up and I don't know where I thought they were going to come from. I have no clue. I don't know where I thought they were. But I tell you what, I didn't realize it was going to be as hard to go find a client as what it really ends up being. And so because of that, how excited are you in the mornings to just get up and go out and talk to strangers, knock on doors, or get on the phone and just call? See, not many people are. But if you understand your purpose, or you have a vision, a clear vision of where you're headed to, you are more likely to get yourself to get up and get on the phone and go do those kinds of things. Okay. So that's principle number one. The first thing that we have to understand is that we understand our purpose, our vision, why. So now notice, as you listen to the daily messages, so many of those are going to be geared around George talking about the purpose, the vision, your why, knowing where you're going. That's the other way you'll hear him say, do you know where you're headed? Do you know where you're going? Because what he understands is that until an agent understands that, none of the rest of this matters. So part of what you have to do, if you have struggled with it, so let me give you that, is as I've taught and trained and worked with agents, one of the things that I've found is most struggle with, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my vision is. So here's what you have to do. If you're unsure, is sit down with a clean piece of paper and just ask yourself that question. What is my purpose? And then you just have to write everything that comes to your mind. Anything that comes to your mind, everything. Like if you have, I hate Russ for telling me to do this, come to your mind, you write down on the piece of paper, I hate Russ for telling me to do this. Like that's when I say write everything that comes to your mind. If anything that pops into your head, you write it down. But you keep asking yourself the question, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And just keep writing and writing every single thing that pops into your head. Now, if you will do that, and it could take, for me, it took over 2 hours. So like I sat down one day and for an hour, I just sat and wrote, what is my purpose? I'd written that across the top. What is my purpose? And then I just wrote every single thing that came to my mind. Like I had thoughts like, I'd rather go to the beach than do this. Like why am I doing this? I don't think I'll ever figure it out. Like I wrote all of that stuff down, but then I would ask myself, okay, but what's my purpose? Now, after an hour of doing that, I felt like, okay, I didn't get anywhere. Didn't work. So what happened was I went another week and then I did it again. What is my purpose? And for an hour, I just sat and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote every thought that came to my head. Well, after I had been now that hour of doing it, I was still frustrated because I felt like I don't know that I've landed on what my purpose is. Now, the reason I'm spending time telling you this is because I have found that with most agents struggle with that, still struggle with, I don't know what it is. I don't know that I figured it out. Now, here's the interesting thing though. After I had done that, I had written for 2 hours solid. I then decided, okay, I'm going to go back through and read everything that I had written down. And as I went through and started to read everything that I had written down, I started to notice a common theme that kept coming up over and over as I read through and interpreted, what I had written down. I started to notice these same things coming up over and over and over again. And I went, oh, I think actually, so looking back on it, I had written it down in a number of different ways, but the same thing over and over and over. And I kind of went, okay, I get it. Now, here's what it is for me. What I figured out is that I needed to help people. And honestly, that's why I'm doing real estate the way I do it. Meaning the reason I'm standing here teaching and training is because I figured out that's what my purpose was. And once I figured that out, then I went after that route of it. See, once you figure it out and you can start to go and make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with it, you become successful. See, for me, that's where I find my greatest success comes when I hear back from you guys as to, hey, I went and did what you taught in that class and it worked. I implemented this, and I've got a couple of agents right now. For you guys that have been through my SOI class, I've got a couple of people right now that have made some pretty strong commitments to me around doing that SOI, working their SOI the way I teach it. And that agent has come to me now a couple of times and been like, it works. It really works. And I'm like, I know. But see, for me, that's where I get the payday. That's where the payday for me is having somebody take what I'm teaching them, implement it, and then come back and go, it works. It worked exactly how you said. So that's where I get it. So, okay. So purpose, vision, why. You first have to understand that. When you understand that and are working towards it, your real estate will become easier for you because you know what you're doing it for. It's not just to get up and pay the bills. All right. Okay, next. Let's move on then to the next one, number 2. So once you understand your purpose, your vision, your why, now we can get into doing this business plans. Okay. So number 2 is going to be goals, plan, and schedule. All right, so this one, we're going to spend a lot of time on this one today because typically I'll spend a whole separate class on this. So I'm going to spend a bunch more time on this. Now, here's the idea of this. The idea of this, is not to do the business plan with you today per se, but it's to get you started on it. Okay, so with that, I have one. So see, I plan on only one person showing up because I only have one. But I'm going to share I'll share it in the chat box for you guys to download. So let me get that put in here. And then I'll pull it up on the screen for you to be able to see as well. Where did it go? All right, give me a second to find it here. I don't know why it's not popping up. Sorry, thought I had it. There it is. Okay, I put it in the chat box. So what I've learned though is on the chat box, you won't be able to, if you're on a phone, you won't be able to download it, but the rest of you should be able to. All right, so let me get that pulled up here. Actually, I should not have shared it yet. Oh, well, too late. All right, here's what we're gonna do. So first thing that we're gonna do is I wanna go through and talk for a minute about this business plan. Oh, there we go. Now I got 2 people. I don't have to stare at the same one the whole time, which isn't bad.
No, I know.
It's not bad. I feel bad for you more because I'm just staring at you the whole time.
I know, it's just.
So now it's only 50%. I'll stare
Right.
at Kate and the other 50. Okay. So we're talking about business plan. So so here's the thing on the business plan. the idea of today is to get you started on that, but not to totally fill it out. So what I want to do is just spend a little bit of time talking to you about this goals, plan, and schedule stuff. Now, in terms of that, the way that most people would set a goal in terms of a business plan is they just kind of pick a random number. Meaning, if I were to ask, so for you guys that are on Zoom, in fact, I would love for you to unmute. What is your goal? Let me change that. When you decided to do real estate, what was your goal? Maybe it's changed since you've gotten here. But when you decided, hey, I'm going to go into real estate, what was your goal in terms of an income?
Like a dollar amount or just like an overall goal?
The dollar amount.
100K.
Okay.
Yeah, mine was about the same.
About the same. Okay. What about the rest of you guys on Zoom?
About the same. Mine was about the same as well.
Okay. Now here's the thing. If I could have started this class by telling you guys, I bet I know how much money you wanted to make coming into real estate. And the reason is because that's the most common number. The most common number that I hear from people is I wanted to make 100,000. Now, guess what? How long ago did I start real estate? 25 years ago, I guess now, or 6 or something. Anyway, 25 years ago. Guess what my goal was when I came into real estate?
100,000.
100,000. Guess what? Home price, the average commission that we would get per check was like $2,000.
Yeah.
It's when I first started. So versus what they are today, but yet that income goal still kind of stays the same for people coming into real estate. Now, here's the interesting thing. Most don't ever achieve it. Now, so here's why. Part of it is because of it's twofold. One is you have to start with understanding purpose, vision, and why. So keep that in mind. We got to understand our purpose, vision, and our why. Until we understand that, then you're probably not going to achieve huge amounts of success in terms of real estate. But most people come into real estate with the goal of, I want to make 100,000. Now, here's the problem with it. When it comes time to you setting a goal for your income on your business plan, do not do it based on an arbitrary number like that, which is how most do it, by the way. In fact, I would guess outside of Everest, very few companies are doing any type of a conversation like we're going to have in terms of how to do it, because typically what happens is they go, okay, well, just decide how much money you want to make. And people go, well, I've never made X amount of dollars in a year, so I'm going to do that. And then after they achieve it, they're like, okay, well, then the next threshold would be this. But there's no reason behind it other than, well, it just seems like that would be the good place to go. Now, so here's what I'm going to invite you to do is I want to invite you to take a different approach to that, to figuring out what your goal is going to be. And here's what I want you to do. So first thing is take what your monthly income, or not income, outgo expenses is. How much money on a monthly basis do you need just to pay your bills? Okay, that's where we want to start with, is how much money do I need just to pay for gas, groceries, house or rent, cars, just like all that kind of stuff. You want to start by writing that down, okay? Once you have written that down, then what we want to do is we want to then say, okay, so now I know how much I just bare minimum have to have in order to survive, okay? Then from there, the next thing, and this isn't necessarily any order, but the next thing I usually say is look at it and say, okay, what debt do I have, if you have any, that you want to pay off in the next year? So you're going to first decide, like, okay, I want to eliminate some debt. So how much do I want to eliminate? Do you have like student loans or credit cards or an RC Willie or whatever? Like, what debts do you have? And decide of that debt, or even your house debt, you know, your mortgage, how much of that do you want to eliminate in the next year? And you're going to write down a number, however much it is. And there's not a right answer. So you just decide how much of that debt do you want to eliminate. Next, you're going to look at and say, okay, what things do I want to buy? So now you're going to then say, okay, are there some things that I want to buy in the next year? New car, new wardrobe, like whatever it is, figure out what that is. And then you're gonna write that down. Now, here's the thing though. Let's use the example of, say, a car. You want to buy a new car. What I want you to do though, before you just say, okay, here's how much it is, go and actually drive the car, if it exists. Maybe it hasn't made yet, I don't know. But go drive the car, figure out what options you want to have. Go find out exactly how much that one's going to be. Then you're going to write down the amount, okay? So that for anything you want to buy in the next year, go actually figure out exactly what it is. See, part of the problem, and I don't know that I would say this is a problem. It's not bad, but we do these vision boards, and even within our company, we will have done where, okay, we're going to go make vision boards, and people bring in magazines, and okay, now go through and find the stuff that you want, and then put it on the board. Not bad, but if you want to take it to the next level, you actually go find the exact car that you want. Go take a picture of you standing next to that car at the car dealership, then put that on your vision board so that it actually means something to you. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's things. Next is vacations / trips. All right. Do you know what the difference between a vacation and a trip is? What is it?
You mean trip like travel? I mean, I have my own definition.
Give me your definition, then I'll tell you mine.
Okay, so vacation is like a beach vacation, like true R&R. You're not doing anything complete relaxing. A trip / travel is I'm going to a place and I'm busy. I'm exploring.
Okay.
I'm learning new things, and you know.
Cool.
doing all
Good,
that.
I like it. That's great.
Okay.
Here's how I define it. Doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah.
I like yours. Mine is if the kids go, it's a trip. If the kids stay home, it's a vacation.
I don't have any kids, so that's fine.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, that is the difference then. Okay, so yeah, anybody with kids understands that joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here's the thing. So now plan any trips or vacations that you want to do in the next year. What are the trips or vacations that you want to go on? Now, same thing with this that I just said about the things. Now, in fact, let me give you actually a quick story. We had an agent down at the Orem office that 5 years ago, might have been almost be close to 6 now, but over summer 5 years ago, she came to this class. In this class, I brought up the whole, do you know what the difference is between a trip and a vacation? And she said, well, based on your definition, I've never been on a trip. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, I mean, like I took my kids and we went camping, but she said, all of her kids were married, gone from her house. And she said, we just couldn't afford to like take our kids and go somewhere like besides camping up in the mountains. And she said, like, I've always wanted to do that. And I said, okay, great. Let me tell you what to do then. I said, so then what you're going to do is following this. I told her, where do you want to take them? And she said, I want to take them and go to Disney World. And I said, great. So she said, so I said, here's what you're going to do then is after this class, I want you to go and research to find out, okay, of your kids, are you going to pay for the kids and their spouse and their kids, you know, your grandkids, you know, you decide what that's going to look like, but figure out like how much are the passes at Disney World going to cost in order for you to take them all to Disney World. And then who's paying for the airfare to get them there? Are you paying for it or are they paying for it? And she said, well, I want to pay for it. I said, well, it doesn't matter, but just like that, you got to decide, do you want to do that? She said, yes. Great. Who's going to pay for the hotel? And who's going to pay for the food? And I said, decide all of that kind of stuff. Then I said to her, I want you to go research it and find out how much is the airfare going to cost? What hotel are you going to stay in? And how much is that going to cost? How much are the tickets that are going to cost? And what are you going to spend on food? And how are you going to handle all that kind of stuff? And so she said, okay, I'm going to do it. And here's the thing is a lot of times I know when I teach these classes, we all have good intentions sitting in the class. I'm like, I'm going to go do that. But then as you leave, stuff happens or whatever. So like, I'll just be honest, like, and especially her, I'm kind of like, I don't know if she'll really even make it real estate, but I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like when I left the class, I honestly didn't think anything else about it until about 1.5 years later. year and a half later, we were at Summit over at the community college. And she comes walking up to me and she said, I don't know if you remember me, but my name is, and she tells me her name. And I said, I remember you. And she said, do you remember in that class, you told me to go research how much it would cost to take my kids to Disney World? I said, yes. She said, I went and did exactly what you talked about. She said, I went back, I researched the airfare, I researched the hotels, I researched all that stuff. And then she said, and then I set my goal based on that. And she said, I'm wanting to report back to you that just 2 months ago, I took my whole family on a trip to Disney World, paid for 100% from my real estate sales. And she said, can you believe I made $120,000 from real estate last year? And I was like, I didn't say it, but in my mind, I was like, no, I really honestly can't believe that she really did. But here's the thing I will tell you is it is because she followed this process of she made it real. See, almost think of it this way is you have to create it in your mind first. You have to see it taking place. That's why I say for this type of stuff, you have to actually go research it as if you're going and planning that trip. See, when you create it in your mind first, then what happens, in fact, actually, let me even just tie some of this together for you guys. Every morning, we read this Napoleon Hill self-confidence formula, right? And I'm going to just read to you. Well, actually, let's do, I don't know how much of it. I'll stop when I feel like it. Okay. First, I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. See, again, back to this, right? Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action towards its attainment, and I here now promise to render such action. Second, I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves into outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. See, that's why I'm saying, like, we have to actually go create this because the dominating thoughts of our mind will eventually reproduce themselves into physical reality. Then I'm going to skip down to number 3. I know through the principle of auto-suggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. See, again, if we can get it and create it here first, it's going to happen. So, and then he goes on to say, I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life, and I'll never stop trying. Now, so that's what we're talking about here of why I'm saying you have to go do these things. Okay, now, next. After we've done all that, the next thing that we need to write down is savings or investing. You can call it either way. How much are you going to save or how much are you going to invest in the next year? And write that down. Just decide, okay, how much money do I need? Now, part of probably what I would say of how to determine this, because again, same concept, you somewhat need to kind of figure out of like, where do I want to get to? What is my clear vision in terms of a net worth or something like that, or something you're trying to accomplish financially? What does that look like? Then what you've got to do is figure out, okay, so what do I need to in order for that to happen? And then back into it to say, okay, if I want to have $10 million, then I need to probably be saving 30, 40, 50, I mean, whatever it is for a year, and decide how much you want to put into that. Okay. Now, let me give you one other thing here. So think of this part here. There's a great book if you have not read it, and it's like a 1 night, maybe 2 night read. It's The Richest Man in Babylon is what the book is called. The author is Og Mandino. Okay, so Og Mandino. But in that book, I actually heard this from Jim Rohn. I heard him do an audio on this, but it's also in The Richest Man in Babylon. But basically says this should be 70% of your income. Okay, so that whatever your amount of money you're going to make. So that's the other way, I guess I would say, for you to figure out on this savings piece. So I'll tell you how to calculate, or I'm showing you how, if you're not sure what to do in savings, then take whatever this is and divide it by the 70% to figure out how much total and what you should be setting a goal for. Now, let me show you what I mean on that. Because what he says, this should be 70% of your income. So where's the other 30%? The other 30% should be between charity and then the savings and stuff. So basically he said this should be 10% of where your money goes. Is 10% of your income you should give to charity. The idea is giving back and helping other people. The other 20% he breaks down from this savings to be active investing and passive. So 10% of your income should go to passive investing and 10% should be active. So there's the other 30%. So basically what he's, see, most people do not put this effort into planning for setting a goal in terms of an income. Instead, they go, oh, 100,000. And I'm going to show you how that will change here. But okay, so this should be 70%. The other 30% should be 10% to charity, 10% to active investing, and 10% to passive. What is the difference? What would be passive investing or passive saving? What thoughts? Anyone on Zoom? All right,
You say passive income?
say that again, Jeremy.
Were you asking like passive income?
Nope, passive savings.
Passive savings? Okay. Maybe like accruing like interest accounts or something?
Okay, good. So yeah, so think of passive investing or saving is somebody else is managing the money. Okay, so that's where you're putting it into like a life insurance policy, a whole life policy, something like that, or you're putting it into a savings account at a bank, giving it to a money manager, a financial advisor, whatever. That's going to be passive. So 10% of your income should be done for passive savings. Now, why? Why would we want to have money? Because here's the thing, you go put money in a savings account and you get like 0.25% interest for the year. Like you're losing money by putting it there. Yet I'm saying you should have money into some passive savings. Now, I'm not necessarily saying a savings account when I say passive savings, but somebody else managing it. Why? Why would we want to do that?
Maybe have it as like a reserve in the sense.
Okay, good. Yeah. So part of it is going to be to have a reserve or some money set aside that we can access easily. That's good. That's part of it. The main reason that we want to have this passive is think of it as by doing 10% into some passive, we are doing our part to help keep the economy running. Because what happens to the money that you put into the bank? What do they do with it? They invest it, right? So they take it and then they go give people loans for cars and all that kind of stuff. So part of the reason we want to do and what he talks about is why we want to have 10% into passive is we want to do our part to keeping the economy running. See, I brought up at the start of the class, March of last year. I remember the end of March last year, I remember saying to my wife, I wonder if we should go to the bank and get a bunch of cash out of the bank just to hold and have on hand at home. Now, here's the thing. So before I came into real estate, I was working at a bank. And so I understand a little bit more than the average person in terms of how banks operate because of that. But here's the thing, and you guys know this too. I don't mean to make it sound like you aren't going to know what I'm about to say, but one of the things, just in case you aren't aware, is banks do, however much money you have put into the bank, if you took all of the accounts that bank has and all of the money that you have or those account holders have in the bank does not have that much cash set aside. Meaning that they have what's called a reserve that they have to keep on hand. So they have to keep so much of the deposits on hand so that when you walk in and say, I need to withdraw $1,000, they have the $1,000 to give to you. So they're required to keep a reserve of a certain amount of money in the bank. But if all of us decided tomorrow to go to the bank and get our money out, the bank doesn't have it. which is what leads to then banks failing. If everybody ran to the bank. So I was in this dilemma last March because I was partially like, I want to go pull out money so that I've got cash on hand in case this whole thing gets crazy. But then the other part of me was like, yeah, but if everybody does that, then the banks are going to crash and like our economy will kind of implode if we do like, so it's kind of this dilemma. But part of what we want to do this for is it helps keep the economy running because, and especially stop and think about when somebody buys a house and they get a loan, where does that money come from? It comes from this type of a scenario. See, that's why. So to some extent, we want to be passive investing because we want to do our part to helping people be able to keep buying houses. Okay. All right. So then based on that, what would be active? If passive is somebody else managing it, what's active going to be?
I'm managing that. Is that it?
That's right. That's right. Is active investing is you're managing. Now, in terms of, let's bring it to real estate again, since I did the passive in terms of real estate, in terms of active for real estate, you guys are going to come across properties that are some really good deals. You are going to find people who say, I need to get out of this house. Let me give you a quick example. So I don't think it was, I can't remember. Within the last 2 years, I got a call from a buddy of mine that lives in St. George. And he said, hey, my dad lives in Bountiful, but he just found out he's got cancer. He's got to go through chemo and all those kinds of things. And he said, I'm just going to help him sell his house in Bountiful and move him to St. George so that he can just live with me and I can make sure he gets to all his doctor's appointments and all that kind of stuff. And I said, great. He said, so I'm coming up to Salt Lake. Will you meet me at his house and help me figure out what he could sell it for? Yep. So I drive to the house, get to the house, and we're looking at it, and it's a little bit rough. And so I'm telling him, so it has a flat roof. And I said, hey, do you know when the last time your dad had the roof done was? And he goes, no, but I'm sure he's not going to know either. And I said, well, because my experience is flat roofs, almost every time that I've sold one, the buyer, the home inspector is going to say it needs a new roof. So I would just recommend plan on, you're going to have to put a new roof on the house. He said, okay. I also noticed it was built before 1978 and the whole exterior that wasn't brick was chipping and peeling paint. Well, built prior to 78, what's the fear? Lead-based paint. Yep. So I said, okay, here's the problem. If we put the home on the market and the person's getting an FHA loan, they're going to come out and they're going to, FHA appraiser is going to see cracked and peeling paint and they're going to say, you got to fix that. But because it was built prior to 78, you got to get like the hazmat suits on to do it. And I said, so I would recommend get all of that taken care of first, because, you know, it's your dad's house. And if he chose to go out and scrape it and paint it, like technically he probably should still have the hazmat suit on, but like, what are people going to do? And plus he's got cancer already. No, I'm just kidding. I did not say that. So my buddy was like, well, what do you think the house would sell for? And I said, you know, I think if he'll go through and do some of this stuff, because the other thing I'd recommend was like new carpet, new paint, all those kinds of things. And I said, probably you could sell it for, I don't remember the number. I told him 300 and something thousand. And he was like, oh, and we were just standing there talking. And he goes, you know, if somebody just walked up and offered him, and I don't remember the number, he said 200 and something thousand. He's like, I'll bet you would sell it. And I said, well, if you're serious, like I have a business partner that we would buy it. If he'll sell it for that, I totally would do that. And I said, but I'm not like I didn't come to meet with you today thinking I was going to buy it from you and, you know, fix it up to sell it. But if you're serious, because my buddy's like, well, my dad can't do this and I'm in St. George. So that means every week I'm going to have to drive up here and do it. And I just said, well, hire it out or whatever. And he was like, no, he's like, talk to your buddy, see if he would be interested. So I called my buddy and said, hey, I got a potential property. So here's my point. You want to be in a position that you have the cash that when you come across a property that somebody says that of, hey, I would just sell it for X if somebody would pay it to that. You want to be in the position that you can say, okay, well, I'll do it. And then you buy it, you fix it up and then turn around and sell it. And so We ended up buying it. We went through, totally turned it into basically like a duplex, but then, you know, with a mother-in-law apartment. And then we sold the property and made a decent amount of money. So that's the idea of active investing, is you're managing the money and you're going to come across properties. Now, in the meantime, here's where I do a commercial now. In the meantime, when you're not ready to do that, bring it to me. I'll buy it. I'll let you represent me on the purchase, so you'll still get paid. I'll buy it, fix it up and sell it. But that's ultimately you want your goal. So I say that jokingly, but I'm also not joking. If you come across a property that you can't buy, call me and I'll buy it. I mean, if it's a good deal, like it, obviously. So, which I had actually this week, somebody text me about one. The problem is it's in a smaller town, but I had somebody from class say, hey, here's a property for you to consider. And so anyway, I'll always take a look at it at least. But that's the idea, okay? Now that I've done that, I can now total all of this up. And now you can write down what your goal is in terms of your income, okay? All right, so let me just show you. I'm gonna pull up the business plan and just real fast. We're not gonna do a whole lot with it, but I wanna make sure you guys, if you have not filled out a business plan, that you know what it looks like and how to do it. But all right. Okay. Turn that off so you guys can see a little better. Okay, so when you're filling out the business plan, now that we have that, what you want to do is you're going to go through and put in business plan for, and then just, you know, 2022 or whatever. I'm like looking at that blank line going, what's the blank line for? I guess if you wanted to say January through December, or I don't know, whatever. But,
Wouldn't it be like say like me,
oh, probably your name.
420.
yeah, your name there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. So then underneath that, there's just this quote from Earl Nightingale. Success is really nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. This means that any person who knows what they are doing and where they are going is a success. Any person with a goal towards which they are working is a successful person. All right. So now what you're going to do then is you can fill in previous years if you've been an agent for a year, but if not, then you're going to leave that blank. But here's your goals for 2022. So total commissions earned. So now that you've gone through and totaled it up the way that we were talking about, that's the number you're going to write in there for your goal. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think the chances are that when you go through and follow that process that I gave you, that it's going to total out to be exactly 100,000? It's not. So whatever the number is, don't round it. So that's the other key on this. Do not round the number. Whatever you add it up and it comes up to be, that is what your goal is. Don't round it up to be 150,000 or whatever. If it comes out to be 136,482, then that's what you write down. Okay. And the reason for that is every one of those dollars means something. And so you want to see the number every time you see it as the total, not a rounded number. Okay. So now I'm going to have that in as my commissions earned. Now, total closed transactions. Hope, the very first year that you do this, you're not going to have this to go on. But the second year, you're going to come back to this to see, okay, here's how many total commissions I earned last year, divided by the number of transactions I did will give you what your average commission check was, okay? So in the meantime, what I would probably say to use instead, if you're new, is just kind of calculate based on the average sales price of a house, so let's just say 500,000, and then say, okay, 3% of that is going to be 15,000. So of that, what split am I on? And so therefore I'm going to make, let's just say 10,000. Okay. So if I had up there that I was going to get on average 10,000, just to keep the numbers and math easy. If I had that I was gonna make 10,000 per commission check, and the commission earned that my goal was the 136,000, well, then I've got to essentially do 14 transactions in order to do that, right? So now that I know that, I can then say, okay, I've got to get 14 closed transactions to make that 136,000. Now, from that, how many appointments will I need to attend in order to get 14 transactions? So, and again, as just a rule of thumb, I usually say, and depending on your skill level, this might be different, but I usually say put the total number of appointments you're gonna have to attend in order to do that transactions is either 2 or 3 times as many appointments. So if you could double it, but if your skill level is not great, you might need to triple that. You might have to go on 3 appointments to get 1, kind of a thing, okay? And it depends on who you're working. If you're working SOI, you could for sure do at least half, okay? All right, so total listings taken. So the next question is, which this is gonna be tied again to up here, the of your closed transactions, how many were buyers or sellers? So if you don't know on that again, or if you're new, think of it, this is how I usually say it, is in the beginning, most agents, the majority of agents are gonna start out being very buyer heavy. So plan on that you're probably gonna be at least 70% buyers your first year. And like I say, it's gonna vary from agent to agent, but most agents are gonna be more buyer heavy. So I would say plan on like somewhere in the 70%. As your time in real estate goes on, you'll move further and further to the other end of the spectrum to where you're probably doing 70 or 80% listings and very few buyers. But most agents to begin with start out very buyer heavy, okay? So based on that, let's say that I was gonna do 14 transactions, then I would need to take a total listings taken, let's use the 70-30. So saying that I would need to close somewhere around 4 of those closed, well, I might need to say I've gotta take then 6 or 7. So I might put in 6 or 7 listings taken here to get 4 sold. Okay? In today's market, hopefully not, but buyer controlled sales then would be the other, 12? Or 11 or 12, I guess. Buyer controlled sales, so I need to put that in. Outgoing referrals, I think you should try to set a goal to have 1 a quarter. Once a quarter that you're calling the relocation department saying, hey, I got somebody who wants to buy or that's coming in from out of state, okay? Total days worked, you can decide what that's gonna look like, total hours prospected, and total contacts that you're gonna have to do in order to get there, okay? All right, the next piece of this, I'm just gonna quickly go through, because I wanna get to the other pieces of the foundation. But sources of business, you should have 2 or 3 that you're working. 1 needs to be your SOI, okay? And then on SOI, a lot of this is just self-explanatory. So just, you can kind of go through and fill it out. If you have questions on it, let me know. And then mindset is going to be books that you're going to read or audios that you'll listen to and events and trainings that you'll attend. One of those that I would recommend, so this ties back to at the start where I talked about we want to work on our relationships, our health and business, not just focus on business. If you have never been to a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within, you should go. Have you done that?
I did it this last
No,
November.
I was thinking you did. So
Yeah.
how was it?
It was awesome.
Yeah. Is it a cool experience?
Super cool experience.
Yeah.
It's like totally immersed into it all. It's
Yep.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one that I would say events and trainings I'll attend. If you've never done it, then add that into your business plan to, I'm gonna have enough money to go and attend a Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins, because awesome experience. Okay. Next is company meetings that you'll attend, and then you can go through and fill all that out. Skill sets, we're gonna talk about skill sets, so I'll come back to this one when we get to the skill set section. And then accountability, who's gonna hold you accountable and how often will you do accountability contracts? What systems and strategies, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and then challenges and solutions. So on this one, when you put together your business plan, right then you should stop and go, okay, what are the challenges that I foresee to me being able to accomplish this? And then from that, write down what those challenges are, and then come up with, okay, what are the solutions? What can I do to overcome the challenge that I'm going to have in achieving this? What are the solutions? Okay. That's a key piece of this. All right. So now let me stop sharing this. Put back away. All right, we're going to keep going. Any questions on the business plan? Take that as a no. Okay. All right, let's keep going then. Next is number 3 then. So on our foundation, remember, we're going to go through 6 items today. So we're on number 3. We won't spend as much time on the rest of them, but number 3 then is discipline / accountability. So which I kind of just mentioned that a little bit just now, is the accountability and discipline. What is the difference between discipline and accountability?
Discipline is like telling yourself you're gonna do something at a certain time of the day and you're gonna do it. And accountability is saying like, if I didn't do it, like, it's like, I understand. I didn't.
Good, perfect, good. So yeah, discipline is, here's how I always say it. Discipline is internal, accountability is external. So discipline is, I'm disciplined enough to do it. And the example I like to use is, as an adult, when I decided I wanted to start exercising on a regular basis, I had to go find somebody to be an accountability partner, because I was like, if I don't have somebody that I'm going to meet them at the gym to exercise, I won't do it. Versus today, I don't want to go exercise with anybody else because I have the discipline to do it. And I like using that time to listen to a Jim Rohn audio or something else. So now, to me, it's like I needed the accountability to begin with to get myself to do it. But today, I have no problem getting up and going out and exercising. I have the discipline to go do it. Does that make sense? So that's the third thing that George found, is that so remember, let me just kind of keep tying this back. These 6 things are all the 6 things that top producing agents have or do. So they all have their purpose, vision, and why. They set goals. They have a plan to meet those goals, and then a schedule that they're going to follow on a daily basis. So in fact, let me say that because I skipped it, is you need to create a schedule for yourself of, this is what my schedule is going to look like. No different than Chick-fil-A out here that's out the window. They know their schedule. They know that they're open at this time and they close at this time, and that they're not open on Sunday. What's your schedule? You need to create a schedule that says, this is the time that I'm going to prospect. These are when I will do my appointments, and create that schedule and follow. Top producing agents have a schedule and they follow. Okay. All right. Then number 3 was then this discipline and accountability. So the third thing that top producing agents have is either they're highly disciplined, or if they're not, they go and find somebody and pay them to hold them accountable. And in fact, it's always interesting to me in terms of real estate that there are a lot of agents paying over $1,000 a month for someone to hold them accountable. See, accountability is a privilege. It's like, a lot of times we look at it as a bad thing, but it's actually, if you stop and think about it, it's a privilege to have somebody hold you accountable. And the proof of that is, look at the top producing agents that spend over $1,000 a month to pay somebody to hold them accountable to achieving and getting to their goals. Okay. So the other thing too, if you look at the word account, a lot of times we feel like it's this negative thing. But if you look at the word account and go back in accounting, what is the purpose of accounting? Is to bring things into balance. Really, the whole purpose of accounting, where it came from, was if you went back in time, is they were weighing the food or whatever and balancing it out. So it's accountability is about bringing things into balance. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay. So here's what I would say. Now that you've created this schedule, if you have the discipline to follow your schedule and do it, awesome. Do that. But if you don't, you need to get somebody to hold you accountable. And you can go through the Everest sales systems and pay to get a coach that will hold you accountable to doing what you said you wanted to do. And if you can't, so here's what I'm saying. If you can't get yourself to do it, if you're not disciplined enough to do it, I just realized I totally spelled that really bad, huh? But when you're talking, I remember I have a rule. If you can't spell a word more than one way, then it's you're not very. Yeah, I wrote disciple instead of discipline. I left out the few thing. Anyway, you get the point. Discipline and accountability. So if you are not disciplined enough to do it on your own, then hire somebody to do it, to hold you accountable to get where you need to go. And that's the idea of that business plan then, is it asks, who are going to be your accountability partners? What are you going to do to be held accountable to get yourself to do it? Okay. All right. Number 4 then is mindset. Now, you'll notice on the business plan that we had in there the books that you were going to read and audios we're going to listen to and all that. All of that is around mindset. The other thing that shows that is if you look at every single morning, you're getting a text message from the company somewhere around 7 o'clock, between 7 and 7:10, you're getting a text message with a daily message. The idea of that is tied to around mindset, because what we have found is, well, and what we know, what you probably already know, is this is a very negative business. When you get on the phone and you start calling it for sale by owner and expired, it's a lot of negativity. And so as a result, we have to do things that are working on our mindset. Be paying attention to what books you're reading, who you're hanging out with, like who are the people you're associating with, because who you associate with is going to have a big impact on your income. And so if you want to change your income, change who you're associating with, right? And then the last piece that I'll say on mindset with this is make sure you are participating. So I have been now with Everest 6.5 years, I think. And here's what I will tell you, is it's interesting to me to see the number of people who will show up in the beginning, but then after a time, they quit coming to the morning ascents. They unsubscribe from the daily messages that I was just talking about, or they get the text but just never do anything with it. They don't come to summits anymore, and it's always interesting to watch how then usually what happens is their production starts to go down, and then when their production goes down, then they come into the company and they go, "Hey, I'm going to move over to XYZ, this discount brokerage company, because they only charge me $500 a transaction or whatever. And I don't really ever use any of the stuff here anyway." And so, like, my point is participate. You don't have to come to every morning ascent. You don't need to listen to every daily message. I'm not saying that, but figure out for yourself a schedule on that of like, how often will you come to morning ascent? How often will you attend summits? How often are you going to listen to the daily message? Like, have some of that stuff, and it's all designed around protecting and helping to strengthen your mindset. Because again, back to this Napoleon Hill, is the dominating thoughts in my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in our physical action. Like, we got to feed it with some good stuff in order to keep it strong. Okay. All right. Next, number 5 is skill set. Now, there are 12 skills, and I'm going to give you the 12 skills, but there's 12 skills that you need to be working on and make sure that you are good at. Because if you want to be successful in the business, what George found is that the top producers have all of this stuff and they have high skill sets in 12 areas. Okay. And so we'll go through and I'll list those for you and we'll talk about them. So first one is going to be, we'll say it's lead. And now these aren't necessarily in an order beyond just what they're going to come to my head, although I somewhat try to They come to my head in the order that we usually do them, but lead generation. So what types, what ways are you going to use in terms of generating leads? Meaning, are you generating for sale by owners? Are you doing expireds? Like, what is your skill set in terms of generating leads? Okay. Then secondary to that of getting the leads is the next skill is setting appointments. Okay. How good are you at setting appointments? So part of what I would recommend that you do, even as we go through this, rate yourself on these, whether you want to do it on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, whatever, however you want to scale it, but rate yourself. How good are you at setting appointments? Okay. And part of why I want you to do this is as you rate yourself on these 12 skills, as I list them, you're then going to know where you need to spend some time working on and getting better at. Okay. Next one is lead follow-up. How good are you at lead follow-up? Here's what I will tell you. Most of the business that you're going to do comes as a result of lead follow-up, yet most agents are horrible at lead follow-up. So part of the problem, in fact, one of the things that I will tell you, even though I'm about to use a round number, but if you are making less than $100,000 in this business, I truly believe this. If you are making less than $100,000 in this business, you have business that's falling through the cracks. It's there. It's just you don't do your lead follow-up, and therefore you miss out on it. Like, let me give you a quick example for me personal. This is a personal one for me. Went and got my hair cut one time. I'm sitting there getting my hair cut. The lady cutting my hair says, so what do you do for a living? And I said, oh, I sell real estate. And she goes, oh, you should talk to Bethany here, the lady that was cutting hair right next to her, in this booth next to her. She says, you should talk to Bethany here because she's really smart with money and she's wanting to invest. And I said, oh, is that right? And Bethany turns and says, yeah, I'm wanting to buy a duplex, but I can't seem to find one. And I said, oh, well, I can help you find a duplex if you want. Yeah. And she says, great, I'll give you my information. She went and wrote it down on a piece of paper, handed it to me. I took it, came back to the office, put it on my desk, and a week went by and I looked at the paper and was like, oh, I got to go research some duplexes for her and call her. And I did. And I was like, oh, I need to do that. And I did. And like day after day, I would look at her name and go, oh, I got and phone number. I got to call her and find some properties. And I didn't do it. And I didn't do it. And I didn't do it. And then I remember a long time later, I go back to get my hair cut and she's there again. And I said, hey, did you ever end up buying a duplex? And she said, well, I didn't get a duplex. I bought blah, blah, blah. See, here's the thing. My point in this, 100%, I know I could have been her agent, but I didn't do my lead follow-up. I didn't follow up on it. And I've watched enough agents over my 25 plus years now of doing real estate to know that is a common thing. We write it down on a sticky note, we put it on our desk, and then we don't ever call them back. Or we get leads and we put them into a follow-up system and then we just convince ourselves not to do it. So part of what I would say is you need to get really good at lead follow-up. Get good at following up on the leads. Have a system that you're going to follow. Now, here's the other thing I'll tell you. When you meet somebody and you put them into your lead follow-up system, whatever it is, trust yourself from when you did it. And what I mean by that is I watch agents put somebody into a lead follow-up system and then it'll pop up like call them tomorrow or today, whatever. The agent will then look at it and go, oh yeah, but it was only last week and I don't want them to feel like I'm bugging them. I'm going to push it out a week. Don't do that. Trust yourself. What I mean is when you get a lead, so you're on prospecting or whatever, and you put it into your system and you're going to put for yourself, follow up with them on this date or this time. When that date or time shows up, trust yourself that you knew what you were doing when you set it up. And I'm just telling you that your gut will tell you the right thing to do in the beginning, but then when it's time for you to do the lead follow-up, a lot of times you may question it and be like, oh, I don't know if I should, it's too soon. I don't want to feel like I'm. Trust that if you thought back here that you should call them on that date, trust what your gut told you at that time and do it. And so every time you get done with a lead follow-up, if it doesn't turn into an appointment and you're gonna set the next contact date or reminder, whatever you feel like it should be, put it in, and then when it shows up, just trust yourself. I knew what I was doing when I set it up, even though you might not feel the same that day. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, next is pricing property. Now, like I say, in our current environment, it maybe isn't as crucial, but it's coming back. Although personally, I feel like come spring again, we're gonna see things go crazy again, just because our inventory is so low still. But we still need to get good at pricing property. You still want to be good at that. So rate yourself. How good are you at pricing property? And I would recommend, if you want to get better at it, once a week, find a property that you can run a CMA on. Go find a property that has just hit the market like that day, do a CMA on it, and then like a month later, go check and see, did it sell and what did you think it would sell for? How good did you do? Okay. All right. Pricing property. Next, we'll do presenting or presentation, either way you want to write it down, presenting or presentations. How good are you at presenting and giving a presentation? Most agents are not very good at that. So rate yourself on how good of a presentation you do. At our listing presentation or the buyer presentation, how good are you at it? Okay. So presenting. Next, let's do handling objections. Okay. How good are you at handling objections? So here's the good news. They don't change. Like the objections that we have today are the same that have been around forever. Now, the version of them may change, meaning like when I first started, people weren't saying, well, I don't need it, I can just go put it on Zillow. Like that didn't happen. But back before that, they would say, I can just put it in the newspaper and it'll sell. So just keep in mind that the objections don't change. So how good are you at handling I don't want to pay a full commission. I'm going to list it with a friend. I've got, we could always list it high and come down later. Like those objections are all the same and they don't change. So how good are you at handling those objections? And do you know what they are and how to answer them? And if you don't, then you need to work on it. So rate yourself on how good you are at that. All right, next. Negotiate. Or negotiating, negotiation, however you want to look at it. How good are you at negotiating? Most agents are not very good. Most agents' idea of negotiating is, hey, I emailed you an offer, and that's their negotiation. So make sure that you're making some phone calls to find out what's important to the seller. If you're representing the buyer, call to find out, hey, other than price, what's the seller looking for? So Jonathan Aubrey, which you may or may not know who he is, but he shared an experience last week about his client was a pilot, and he found out that this seller, that the buyer, he had a buyer that was a pilot for Delta, wanted to buy this house. They found out there were multiple offers, but found out that the sellers love to travel. And so they were going to accept a different offer, but Jonathan's called and said, hey, my client is a pilot with Delta and he will give I don't know if it was buddy passes or what.
2 free vouchers.
Yeah. So flights that go anywhere as part of our offer for them to buy our house, because they found out the sellers love to travel. They said, all right, well, how do we make this offer work then? And put together. See, that's the idea of negotiating, is call and find out what's important to the other side and figure out how to then meet that or to take care of it. Because he got an offer accepted because the pilot said, but here's the thing, if you found out somebody liked to travel, there'd be nothing stopping you from going and buying a gift card or whatever for Delta and saying, here you go, here's $2,000 to go anywhere you want, or whatever. So that's the idea of that. Okay, next is, let's see. What number are we on? Not that it matters.
7. That was 7.
That was 7,
Yeah.
okay. Next, let's do working with buyers, okay? So that's the next skill set, is how good are you at working with buyers? Meaning, like, do you have a process in place that you follow with the buyers? Or are you letting the buyers control you? Is kind of what I'm saying is you need to have kind of a, this is how the process works. And again, I was just at Disneyland yesterday, so I'm gonna, you'll have to forgive me because I'm gonna use Disneyland references. But at Disneyland, they tell you if you want to ride this ride, first you're gonna walk this way, then you're gonna walk this way, then you're gonna walk this way. Like they have kind of to get to the front of the ride. You don't just get to walk up and just go, okay, I'm getting on the ride. Although they did just introduce Lightning Lane yesterday, which I'm not excited about, but totally off topic. But anyway, just know you should have that same concept of this is how I work. And then you want to communicate that with the buyers. This is how the process works. This is what we're going to do. This first, you're going to go talk to my loan officer within Sparrow to get pre-approved. Once you've gotten approved, then we'll get it, you know, like just have your process set up and ready to go of how you're going to work. So did you raise your hand? Oh, I thought I saw.
Would you like me to?
I thought I saw your hand go up off to the side there. So for you guys online, in case you can't tell, Rick showed up.
Rushing on, Express.
I know, that's why I thought that. All right, let's see. Next, what am I forgetting here? We'll go closing next then. So next skill is closing. How good are you at closing? Both for the appointment and for the contract. So rate yourself on how good you are at closing, not just for the appointment, but for the contract as well. You know, kind of think of it as both ways of how good are you at asking for the appointment, but also how good are you at closing for the transaction or the deal. All right, next is, oh shoot, I just had one on my head and then I just lost it. All right, well, I'll go to the next one. Next one is future pacing. What is future pacing? Future pacing means how good are you at preparing them for what to expect? So that's one of the skills that top agents are really good at saying, okay, this is what the process is going to look like. This is what you should expect. So let me give you an example of that. I had one of the ones that I use with a seller is I want to explain to my seller, hey, when we get an offer in, they're going to have a due diligence time frame in which they can do any inspections they want to. They can check out the house. And then I tell my seller, don't be surprised if after they do their inspection, the most I've ever had is somebody come back and ask for the seller to fix 72 items. So I always tell the seller, be prepared for them to come back asking you to fix 70 plus things in your house. And they're like, usually like, what? There's not 70 things wrong. Well, and then I use that to say, well, believe it or not, like when the home inspector comes through, they're going to point out any little thing that could be. So don't be surprised if a buyer comes back and wants you to fix all 70 items. Now, what's going to happen though, when now they do the inspection, the buyer comes back and asks for 5. They want your seller to fix 5
You're gonna
things.
feel like, oh, sure, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
The seller goes, whew, we were worried we were going to get the 70 items. Those 5, oh yeah, we'll do it. Like, so part of it is just how good are you at future pacing of what to expect. Now, same thing with the buyer. How I'm going to future pace the buyer though, is I'm going to tell them, don't be surprised if after you get the report back, it looks like this house is falling apart and like you probably don't want to buy it. But I also then tell them, even if you went and did a home inspection on a brand new construction, never been lived in home, they're going to find things that they're going to say, you should watch this and be careful of that or whatever. Like, just know part of what you're doing with your home inspection is to bring you up to speed. It's almost like they're going to try to take you from having never lived in the house to these are the things to keep an eye on. Because owning a home also means, like, especially if they've been renting, you could say, if something breaks now when you're a renter, you just call the landlord, they come fix it. Well, you now get to be that person. So just know that essentially I tell the buyer, they're giving you your honey-do list for the next few years. Here's the things you're going to want to just keep an eye on and slowly replace and fix along the way. That's the idea of future pacing. But I tell them when it does come back, if there are safety type things that are major issues, we're going to ask the seller to fix it. If it's not, just look at it as it's your honey-do list that you're going to have to work on for the next few years to kind of constantly be working on the property. That's future pacing, telling them to be prepared for this. Which leads us to the next one then, which is price reductions. I didn't do that yet, right? Nope. Price reductions. So part of future pacing and getting a part of getting price reductions is being good at future pacing. Is telling them, here's what you want to watch for. When we put your home on the market, if we're getting no showings and no offers, every couple of weeks, we're going to want to adjust the price, or you might say it as improve the price because the market's telling us. See, if future pacing is telling them, here's what we're going to look out for. And when we see it, this is what it means. Okay. All right. Next. Customer service. A great book. So now we've already talked about some books to read and stuff. A great book on customer service, if you've never read it, is called Raving Fans. Can't remember who the author is right now, but Raving Fans is a great, really, really good book that gives you some ideas of how to create basically raving fans. Okay. All right. What number are we on?
That was 12.
Whew. I was like, I can't think of anything else. So I still feel like I'm missing one somewhere, that maybe I threw one in that. Well, if I think of another one, it seems like I'm missing something. I feel like when I'm looking up there. But good enough. All right. So those are the skills. So hopefully you rated yourself on those and you can now look at it and say, okay, now remember, so now let me tie this back to the business plan. On the business plan, it had a skill set thing for you to basically list what skill are you going to work on. So based on what you're good. So based on what we just were talking about in here and having you rate, when you're filling out your business plan, now you know, or you should know, hopefully, of which skills you need to work on getting better at. Okay. All right. Oh, and by the way, back to negotiating. If you have not read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, that's another really good book to read on negotiating. It's Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Yeah, if you've never read that, that's a good one. All right. Number 6. Systems, tools, and strategies. So systems, tools, and strategies is the 6th. So here's the thing that's interesting to me on this is, remember at the start of the class that I said to you guys, when John, George, Rob, and Gretchen, and whoever the 5th person I can ever remember was sitting around the table. And the reason I can never remember them is because they are no longer part of the company and haven't been for my whole tenure of being here. But remember when they sat down there, they said, we want to create a company that is basically about helping people become their very best. So you look at all of this stuff that we've talked about so far really is more geared towards that versus systems and strategies. Now, here's the thing that's interesting though, is almost every manager, broker of an office, when they're recruiting people, they want to focus on systems, the tools, and the strategies. Like, look at the systems we have. Look at this great tool we have for our agents. And the reason most of them do that is because they don't understand all of the rest of this stuff to the point to teach it and train it the way that Everest does. And so they start with, look at these systems, tools, and strategies. So notice though, the reason I'm saying that is it is one of the 6 pieces of our foundation and they are important, but we don't spend a whole lot of time on this. And the reason we don't is because every company out there essentially has the same tools. In fact, I was with Coldwell Banker before I came over here to Everest. And I remember leaving Coldwell Banker feeling a little bit like, oh, I might be giving up on some really good tools. And then I got over here and somebody started to show me the business builder that's in 21 Online. And I got into it and I was like, this is the exact system that Coldwell Banker has, but it's called InTouch versus Business Builder. And I was like, it's exactly this, like I remember I got here and said, like, training this stuff is going to be so easy because it's what they had. Like, and what I've learned, I would just say, is everybody has the same tools essentially in terms of the systems and tools that are available. So, but I am still going to give you guys a few. I'll talk to you real quick about a few that I would say are good to be familiar with. Okay. So on 21 Online, the ones that I would say that you should get in and mess around with and get to know a little bit is the first one I would say is Golden Ruler. Golden Ruler is the system that tracks the number of views that are happening online for that, and you can set that up as a report to be sent to your seller, and you can set it up to be weekly, every other week, or monthly, however you want to do it. But I would say to set it up to do it weekly. And so Golden Ruler is one to get familiar with. It tracks on which websites their house is being viewed and the number of views. And the reason I like that is part of what I do with future pacing with a seller is I tell the seller that the seller and I are working together on getting their home sold, and that my job is to get the home seen. My job is to get it out into the market and be seen. Their job is the price and the condition. So I always kind of tell them, like, until we get an offer on your home, my job is to get the property seen. Your job as the seller is to make sure that it's priced right and that it's in a good condition. If you'll get it priced right and in a good condition, I'm getting it seen, we'll get an offer. If I'm getting it seen, but the price is too high or the condition's not good, we aren't going to get showings or offers. So that's where I future pace them of, hey, look, this is what it is. Now, then with Golden Ruler, I'm able to weekly show them I'm getting the property seen. People are seeing the house. If they're seeing it, and so again, part of the future pacing is saying, if they're seeing the house, if they're looking online and seeing the house, but they don't want to come and see the inside, why would they not want to? And it's either the price or the condition. They either don't like the condition that it is or the layout or whatever, which we can't do anything about the layout, but they don't like the price or the condition. And so I just future pace them with that of saying, I'm going to send you a report that shows you how many people are viewing. If we're not getting those people coming, see, it's your way of showing we're doing our job. Look at how many people saw your house. The fact that they didn't want to come and see the inside is a reflection of either the price or the condition. And then I usually go, and we both know it's not the condition because, you know, they think their house looks great. So we both know it's not the condition, therefore it's the price. All right, so that's Golden Ruler. The other one that you want to become familiar with on there is Toolkit CMA, although this one is going to be changing. Now I'm going to tell you a different one, just we're not quite there yet, but we've got a new system coming called Moxie Works, which it's on there right now. And we'll start using that one instead of Toolkit CMA, but in the meantime, Toolkit CMA. In fact, actually, maybe from today forward, I'm going to quit saying that. Go to Moxie Works.
Go to Moxie.
And it's because it's there now and it's available, and it's called Impress. No, sorry,
Is that? and
I'm
that's
still Moxie Present.
Moxie.
So there's Impress, but there's also Present. Impress is like flyers and stuff. Present is like the CMA tool.
Okay.
So I'm still getting familiar with it, but once I am, hopefully first of the year, I'll start training on that. So, and doing classes for you guys to learn. Okay. So Moxie Impress is the, or sorry, Present is the one that I would say to get on and start playing around with to get familiar. All right, next is unique property websites. The unique property websites is every time we list a home, Century 21 will create a website for that house. to where people, you could go print flyers from it, all that kind of stuff. But here's how I would recommend you use it, is go get the unique property website address, give it to your seller and ask them to share it on their social media. Essentially, then what's going to happen is they're going to share that link, which is now advertising you to everybody on their sphere. And really even asking them to ask their sphere to share it. So if they'll share it and then ask all their friends and family members to share it, now boom, hopefully you're getting blasted out there even more. Okay. All right, so that's unique property websites. Let's see, the other one is Zap, which again, Zap is going to be replaced, but this one's not available, or at least wasn't last week. I haven't looked this week, but is through MoxieWorks called, oh shoot, I can't remember what it's called now. Anyway, MoxieWorks has a new version of that, but until that comes, Zap is the one we want to use. Engage, Moxie Engage is what it's called, yeah. So it's the MoxieWorks and Engage. But as of last week, I haven't checked this week, it wasn't on 21 Online yet, the Engage. Impress and Present are. All right. Let me see if I can think of any other ones. Oh, the other one on there, this system tool that you want to become familiar with is Real Satisfied,
Oh, yeah.
which is a survey that goes out to your clients after you close a transaction.
And doesn't marketing typically, in my experience, marketing usually handles that, I think.
Yeah, as long as you give to Brianna or the transaction coordinators an email address, it'll automatically go
It
out.
will, okay.
Yep. All right, so those are the 6 pieces of the foundation. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
What books would you recommend for like say me who's starting out in real estate? What books would you recommend?
One of the other ones that I didn't say yet today that I would is the author is Thomas Fries, but with an S, not a Z. And it's The Secrets of Question-Based Selling. This is another good one. And if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, you should do that one too. I don't know, any others that you would? I think those are good starts.
Most definitely. I love
Okay.
reading, so.
Cool, yeah, no, that'd be good. All right, any other comments, questions? Zoom? All right. You look like you're so excited, Alex. All right, okay, well, thanks for being here, guys. So next week's class, I don't remember what it is. Oh, or do we, what is next week? Let me see.
You're like on the mountain.
Lead generation is what it is, so. All right,
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, guys, see you later.
Bye. Have a nice day.